Hey there, this is Real Stories in Real Estate. And today I have Robyn Yack and Cheryl Koffman with us. And we're going to talk a little bit about a specialty of theirs, which is helping people move on after separation and divorce. So thank you guys so much for joining me today.
You're
Thank you
welcome.
for
Glad to
having
be here.
us.
So do you want to jump right into it? Do you want to tell us, what are the biggest mistakes you see people make when they decide, hey, okay, this isn't working for us. Let's list our home.
Yeah. Or do you want to start, Robyn?
No, it's okay.
Okay. I was going to say, so when people are going through divorce so let's just say what it is. When you're selling your house, it's a stressful time for everyone. When you're going through divorce or separation, selling your house, add on 1,000 times the stress level that, a regular person would be going through, a regular seller would be going through. So, we got into this field of sort of naturally got into this field of helping people go through separation and divorce. And yeah, we see a ton of mistakes that people make, mostly in that they're looking for revenge rather than making money on their biggest asset that they'll ever have. So I think that's one of the biggest mistakes is just not seeing, the end goal, which is getting out of the house, starting fresh, getting
Yeah.
your money out.
We see that a
And
lot on the mortgage side too, where it's like you guys are spending more on lawyers that you could have just
Yes,
separated that money and given it to your children instead, right? If we keep
100%.
our eye on the prize and moving forward and as amicably as possible, then often they could spend a lot less, like just on a mediator or instead of fighting each other in court, right?
mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure. And then it, the sub mistakes on that is, depending on who remains in the house and who, if they want to sell, both parties, because sometimes you have one party who wants to remain in the house and doesn't want to sell. So they end up either they think they can change the locks, which they're not allowed. They, don't let the listing agent in. They don't let showings in. They keep the house in a disarray. And again, all these things are going to backfire on them because it's going to affect the value of the house. The goal is, and like Cheryl said, the goal is to get the most money out of the house that you can. But people are so angry and emotional that our role as real estate agents in this is to try and keep them in check and try and bring down as much as we can the emotion and let their brain work as opposed to their emotions.
Yeah, these are one of the times where you engage all of the things you do, right? All the hats you wear, the therapist and the
Yeah.
mediator and the
Oh, yes.
stager and the
Yeah.
listing
Yes.
agent and yeah, all of the things. But
Yeah.
it's so important to have people who understand how to navigate this. What are other things you see as mistakes when they're going to, say, move on from their current matrimonial home?
Well, I think one of the big mistakes is that people don't have a separation agreement. It's very important to have a separation agreement and have that dated. That's the date, where the house would be valued. A lot of people don't do this, definitely needs to be done, should be done before selling and definitely before closing. We also see people who don't have a separation of assets. So on closing day, it's like, oh, who's getting the treadmill? Who's getting the dishes? Those decisions
Right.
need to be figured out well in advance, or it's just a disaster moving forward. And we see it all the time. People just can't agree. And so they just brush it like they sweep it under the rug as opposed to talking to their lawyers and mediators and getting these things in writing and figuring it out. So that's some of the advice we give people right away before we even start working with them.
Yeah, that's amazing advice. And we see it on our side too, that everybody thinks a separation agreement's easy, right? But you built
Right.
a whole life together. It's
Mm-hmm.
not easy, right? Who gets the car? Okay, who
Right.
maybe you get more of the house and you keep your pension. Like it's very complicated. And
Mm-hmm.
Hmm.
it seems simple, but like ChatGPT cannot do this for us,
Yeah.
right?
No,
Like it just
no,
cannot.
it cannot. Another thing we see is that people, when they go to sell their house, they don't use a realtor that is specialized in this area. And it's so important. We say, we use the analogy that if you had cancer, you wouldn't go to your GP to treat your cancer. So for this most important asset, why would you not use somebody who specializes in this? And something as simple as, so on closing, and this happened to, I'm divorced, but when I was moving into my new house, the house was from a divorcing couple. And the real estate agent that was there listed the property, obviously was not specialized in divorce. And when we got possession of the property, we got there, and so the wife had been living in the house, but I guess some of the stuff was the husband's. So she moved out, and we had possession of the house, and all the husband's stuff was still in the house. Whereas if you had the experience and you knew what you were dealing with as a realtor, you would make sure that both parties had moved all their stuff out. But she just assumed, oh, it's like any other sale, right?
Right.
So closing,
Yeah.
they're going to move out. Well, that wasn't exactly what happened.
Yeah, I
So
would
that's,
say on our end, it's the same. Like, if you don't really understand how all of these transactions work, right? How, when you do and don't need a separation agreement, because sometimes
Mhm.
we don't need a separation agreement. If there's no property, if there's no
right.
children or minors, right? Like, sometimes we can get away with what we call a statutory declaration. So they
Mm-hmm.
sign
Mhm.
something at the lawyers. But if you decide somewhere through this process you don't want to sign anymore, then we have a problem again, right? Like, things
Right.
don't always stay as amicable as you think. The other thing we see a lot is people are excited to buy something new. So they go buy something new and they don't realize that it's very difficult and only a few lenders will allow us to bridge finance from a house with two
Mhm.
people on it to one with one person or different people on it if they're adding their parent co-signers or whatever. And it's very difficult to try and do that to two houses, or you may not be able to. So we really
Right.
need to, cascade what we're doing, or sell first and then buy, or somebody buys and then somebody doesn't. And
Yep.
the
Yeah.
other thing we see is how they treat support payments, right? Different
Mm-hmm.
lenders will treat support payments differently. So a lender who adds it into the liabilities versus subtracting it from your income might allow you to qualify for 10, 15% more money. And that's where knowing which lenders, which credit unions will treat this a little differently is really
Mhm.
important.
Yeah.
Yep.
That's why, again, you need a mortgage broker that specializes in this. You need a real estate, like, you need all the key people, and they need to specialize in helping couples with a separation or divorce. Because, like you said, if we're going to be taking them to buy another property, we need to communicate with you as the mortgage agent to make sure that they will be able to close that as well.
And then what do you think about, like, when they using different realtors? Like
So
like
that's
you
a
have two
complicated
parties.
one.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's really to no one's advantage to use more than one realtor. You could be paying more commission. The realtors might not talk or communicate well together. They might want to put two signs on the lawn, which is always a disaster because it tells everyone that what your motivation is for selling, right? I mean, if people can get along enough to use one realtor, we would suggest and recommend that. But there's also cases where people just don't trust each other anymore. And we've had a lot of clients who, oh, my ex-spouse's friend is going to be a realtor and I don't trust him at all. And, you know, whether they whether they're doing anything wrong or not, it's just your feeling of not trusting, someone else that you feel has your ex-spouse's back. And in that case, get two realtors.
Yeah.
But you have to
Well,
understand in what's called a co-listing with two realtors that one brokerage will always take the lead. So, it'll be one brokerage that will deal with the deposit and put the sign on the lawn and deal with the showings. And so you just need to understand that even though you have two realtors, there's always going to be one that takes the lead in a co-listing.
yeah. And that's why we say, if you really want to avoid the two agents, your best bet is to go with somebody who you don't even know, who is a completely independent third party and who specializes in this, right? Because we don't know, that person wouldn't know either of the parties. So there
Yeah.
wouldn't
Right.
be that feeling of, oh, they're working better for him than for me. And then you can also eliminate the need for two agents.
And you want
Yeah.
someone who's unbiased, right? That's why what Robyn's saying, someone you don't know, unbiased, someone who's not emotionally involved. Even an old childhood friend, is still somewhat emotionally involved because I know one of the parties, right? So
Yeah.
you want someone unbiased, not emotionally involved, someone who's just neutral and is looking out for the best interests of both people as opposed to looking out for the best interests of one or the other. And I think that's where Robyn and I, we deal with a lot of divorce and separating clients, and they understand that we are that sort of unbiased, neutral party that can help them.
Can we talk a little about common law as well?
Yeah,
Yeah, go
so
ahead, Robyn.
it's very important for common law for people to understand that there is no matrimonial home in common law. The status of matrimonial home is in the Family Law Act. So a lot of people think, oh, I've been living with somebody for 3 years. And in some circumstances, when you're living with somebody for 3 years for tax purposes, you can be considered married. But the status of the matrimonial home never becomes that. So in those cases, and that's why we always tell people, if you're going to cohabitate in common law, you need to have an agreement, a cohabitation agreement, that also, because you might have a situation where only one party is listed on title, which you definitely need a cohabitation agreement for. But even if you have both parties, the cohabitation agreement will say in what percentage each owns the property. And it's so important when you break up that I mean, obviously we don't want people to break up, but you always have to plan for that. And, what happens in the event of selling the property, that it's clear. So, because if you don't have a cohabitation agreement, then the person who has title can sell the property. You have no say, and they can take 100% of the earnings. And then
Yeah.
what?
And we see that a lot more now. Like a lot of couples, like you can afford a wedding or a house, but not both. Right. But it's often
Right.
the case that one party comes in with either more income or more down payment. And if you have that discussion and that exercise of building that cohabitation agreement ahead, talking about, okay, in worst case scenario, if we break up, what do you leave with and what do I leave with? You probably won't break up or at least fight about money as much as you would if you didn't have these discussions, right?
And what we
No.
try to explain to people is that if you're living together and that person, let's say, was living in that house and you move in, that their house, their name is on title, that house is their house. As opposed to your matrimonial home, where if that person inherited the house before you met, before you got married, or lived in the house before you got married, you have ownership of half of that house. We need your spousal consent to sell that house.
Yeah.
So a lot of people don't understand that even if you marry someone and they have their house they've been living in for 20 years and you move in with them, that house has now become half yours. They cannot sell from under you, but in a common law, they can sell it from under you. It's a big difference and people don't understand it. Because like
Yeah.
Robyn said, everyone thinks, oh, we've been living together 3 years. The house is half mine.
Yeah. Yeah. It's not
Big
quite how it
distinction.
works. Yeah.
Yeah,
No, and people don't want to have those discussions. And I can say for myself, I am currently in a common law relationship. We bought a house together, and before we moved in, we signed a cohabitation agreement. And it's not nothing to be scared about. It's just, it's first of all, you should be able to talk finances with the person that you're living with. So
Yeah.
yeah,
it should be
it's true.
it should be fun. It should be a good and educational discussion anyways, but everybody needs to be protected because you never know what's going to happen.
Yeah,
And this is the time when you can have the conversations. Like you said, like if you're at the end, everybody is fighting and you get nowhere. So here's where you can have those
do it ahead of
good
time.
discussions.
Yeah. Well, and I
Yeah,
mean, I'm sure you guys see it because we see it a lot. The messiest separation negotiations are definitely not the people that had those conversations on the way in,
for sure.
right? There's
Yeah,
way more to divide or discuss or determine when you never had like a baseline discussion about who's entitled to what.
agreed. But to be
Mm-hmm.
fair, a lot of people just don't know.
Yeah.
Right? Like we
Yeah.
see it all the time. People just don't know. Like I know someone who, married someone quite wealthy and is living with them and has no idea that they have 50% right to that home. Like they just don't know.
Yeah.
And So you know what? Some of it's just like miseducation,
Yeah.
no education
Yeah.
there about that.
But in that same vein, I think it's important that so we have a lot of our kids who are can't afford to purchase a home on their own, and they're having family help with the deposit or the down payment.
Hmm.
And then what happens, and I know this happened to me, right? So when I bought my house with my ex-husband, my parents gave me $25,000. We got separated. The house was split 50-50. And my parents are like, well, what about our $25,000
Hmm.
that we gave you? And so it's really important to have these discussions as mortgage brokers, as real estate agents, it, even at the very beginning when couples are buying, if you know that the deposit is coming from elsewhere, that there's ways of protecting that.
Hmm.
If the parents want, they could put a mortgage on the house. They can sign a contract where it's recognized that this is a loan and not a gift. So there's ways of doing it, but people they only think about it at the very end.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, and I mean, the other thing that goes with that a bit too, that I see a lot, or that we'll have discussions with parents, is also talking about wills, right?
Mm-hmm.
If you are
Hmm.
co-signing or you're a guarantor for your child's house and you're on title, what about your other
Right.
kids? Like, if something happens to you, are they entitled to that property?
Yeah.
Um, and even in the cohab agreement, some discussions around, like you said, having somebody move in and have entitled to half, right? Making sure that that's documented, that they're
Hmm.
aware. If this happens, this is what you're going to do, or this is our
Yeah.
expectation, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is so interesting. What do you find you do above and beyond? Because I know you guys are amazing and you do go above and beyond for your separating clients. And I think maybe it does stem from some personal experience that you know how hard things are to do alone sometimes. Like, can you highlight some of the things that you do as part of your process with your clients?
Well, sure. One of the main things we do is we have a big third party professional list. So we can refer, because we've worked with so many, different people, we can refer mortgage agents, lawyers, mediators, people who do counseling. Like we have a big list of people that we can provide because going through a situation like that, and, I haven't, I'm happily married, but I know Robyn has, and I have a lot of other friends and family that have gone through divorce. You need a lot of support during that time. And it's emotional and there's children involved. It's very stressful. I was a teacher for many years
Mm.
and I saw a lot of people getting divorced and how it affects the children, right? Emotionally, academically, parents fighting over pickup, who gets to pick up the child, who gets the work. There's so many emotions involved. There's a lot of support needed. And I think one of the things we specialize in is just supporting our clients from start to finish,
Yeah.
really.
Yeah.
Like we still have clients that will call us months later and say, I need to speak to someone. I need some help. And we're there. Like, doesn't
Yeah.
matter if
Yeah.
we're part of
Yeah.
it. We're there for more than the transaction.
Yeah. Yeah. Very often we have clients, unfortunately, it's usually the women who really didn't know what was going on in their marriage. They don't have financial know-how. They don't know about insurance. They don't know about accountants, all these things. And it's very, very overwhelming. I mean, when I went through it, I was on top of everything and it still was overwhelming to me. And one of our things was we didn't want this to be just a transaction.
Yeah.
Very often we'll get people who call us thinking, okay, I need to figure out what I'm doing with the house. But then we say to them, okay, well, whoa, let's take a step back. You might need to speak to a financial expert who can decide whether you're going to have enough to buy another house versus stay in the house,
Yeah.
right? So we'll often say to them, let's take the journey together. We'll guide you on each of the steps. And if it turns out that we're going to sell the house for you, great, but that's not the be all and end all.
Yeah.
And that's really
Yeah.
what's important for us, is for people to understand that I've lived it. Cheryl's lived it through all of our transactions. And it's more important for us to help people see the light at the end of the tunnel than the closing transaction. The closing
And to be
transaction will
fair,
come.
honestly, probably we deal like 8 out of 10 people, we just give advice to. and they never end up selling their house or moving
Mhm.
or doing anything, but they just want advice and we're happy to give it to them. Also, just to mention, we had written a chapter in a book. I'm just going to show this book if it's okay. This book is
Yeah.
amazing and it's really
Yeah.
great for women who, can you see
Yeah.
it? It's called
Yeah.
The Ultimate Divorce Game Plan. And it's excellent for anyone who's going through, separation or divorce. They sell it on Amazon.
Yeah.
And
And
we're proud to be part of it because we worked with a group of women who all sort of contributed different things to it. And it's kind of like a roadmap of how to get through, all different areas of divorce and separation, not just real estate.
we worked with Nicole, Denise's partner. She
Yes.
Oh,
wrote the
okay.
mortgage
Yeah, for
That's
chapter.
listeners
great.
who
Right,
don't
right.
know,
Right,
Nicolay wrote
right.
the, mortgage chapter in that book.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
So
something we're proud of. And, we recommend that to our clients too. It's just knowledge, right? It's education and knowledge.
Yeah. And I do find, like, the same as what you said, we talk to people, a lot of people very, very far ahead of actually pulling the trigger on a separation or a divorce.
Mm-hmm.
It's often initial conversations about, what would my options look like? Would I be able to afford this home on my own?
Yes.
If I
Yes.
had support payments, would I be able to qualify? Could I do this? But it's a lot of initial just financial education and financial discussions. Lots of those never go anywhere, or often people
Mm-hmm.
reconcile, which is amazing.
Yep.
But we are always open to have those confidential conversations way, way ahead of anything permanent actually happening.
Yes.
yeah. Yeah, it's so important people have their roadmap and know what steps they can and can't take.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I mean, we see it sometimes where they have a separation agreement and they're like, "I'm keeping the house." And you're like, "You can't keep the house." Like,
Yeah.
you actually like, or are you moving in a new girlfriend who has double the income you have? Like, how is this working, guys? Right?
Yeah.
Um, because you don't always realize how you qualify. And
Well,
if you've
yeah,
been two incomes and you haven't worried about qualifying for a
right.
long time, there's
Yeah,
only been like 75 major mortgage regulation changes since 2008. So just a few,
just a
right?
few.
Just a few.
So,
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
it may not be the same as the last time you qualified for a mortgage. And when you're doing
exactly.
Yeah.
it on your own, like you said,
Yeah,
it can be stressful. I mean, we've
yeah,
done things like gone to like the branch meetings at banks with people who are doing it alone because they haven't done something alone in a long time
Yeah.
and
yeah,
a
If
high
ever.
stressful
If ever.
situation. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. But when we're in high stress and we're by ourselves, sometimes you just
Mm-hmm.
don't like retain everything or you need someone else to
Yeah.
just
mm-hmm. Yeah,
hear it too for you, right?
yeah, yeah. A lot
So
of
I think,
times we get people, reaching out to us, like you said, that want to stay in the house and
mhm,
they want to buy out their partner, and we try and get to the bottom of like why they want to stay in the house, right? And often it's, well, the kids and this is their home, and but you have to remember they have memories of you together. So,
yeah,
you forget that. And so maybe starting in a new property would be beneficial to you, but then also you could be like you said on one income. So there was a couple that a lady that we knew that she got a family to help with the down payment, but then she struggled with the monthly payments. And is
yeah,
that really worth it? What kind of a like if you are stressed about your monthly payments, then you're taking that stress out on your family and your colleagues. So it's not necessarily the best move. So we try to talk people through,
Mm-hmm.
again, the rationale versus the emotional on whether it makes sense for them to really stay in the house.
And
yeah.
then we
We
refer
always
them to
say you
people like
can.
you who can figure it out for them, right?
Well, and I think people forget, like, oh no, I want to keep this big house because our kids have memories in it. And it's like, okay, but like, are you going to do the maintenance on that big house by yourself?
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. It's very, very like, it's a high emotional state. And often
Yeah.
it's the case that it's like, there's emotional decisions and financial decisions, and they're not always the
Mm-hmm.
same answer.
Yeah.
Right?
Exactly. Yeah.
But we
Like
can.
somebody needs to guide them through that.
Well, and I mean, when you specialize in this, you guys have done so many of them, you'll see things that are coming before somebody else even knows.
Yeah.
right?
Mhm.
Which is a lot of peace of mind for somebody going through something that's kind of unknown to them, right? So I think that's super cool that you're here to help these people. And yeah, I hope you keep doing it because you're really good at it.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
We love it.
Well, thanks so much for joining me today. So this was Real Stories in Real Estate, and this was Robyn and Cheryl. And if you have questions about separating, divorce, selling a home after separating these or before separating, well before even, give them a call and see what they've got to say that can help you.
Thanks so
Thank you.
much.